call to order the regular meeting of the Chicago Board of Election Commissioners for Tuesday, July 29th, 2014. Good morning, good morning, everyone. My name is Langdon Neal. I'm chairman of the board. Seated to my left is Commissioner Maricel Hernandez, and to my right is Commissioner Richard Cowan. First item on the agenda is the consideration of the agenda itself. Any additions, deletions? Hearing none, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. We have minutes for June 10th, 2014. Has everyone had an opportunity to review them, and is there a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Commissioner Hernandez, seconded by Commissioner Cowan. For discussion, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That'll be the order. And we also have minutes for July 8th. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Commissioner Hernandez.
Second.
Seconded by, I'll have to second.
Right.
Yes, I see.
I'll have to second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Executive Director's Report, Mr. Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to let the board members know that we had a meeting today with the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under the Law. They have a proposal that I would like to pass out about recruitment of judges, college students. Yes. So it's something that we just had an initial discussion about. Not ready to say yay or nay or anything, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. We're still going to have several more meetings.
So how would this work with our efforts with the MICVA challenge?
Right.
The MICVA.
Well,
High school.
Yeah, MICVA's do at high school. These are college.
Oh, these are college
These are college
students. Oh, okay.
students. And, you know, with MICVA, they also are involved in training also. This is strictly recruitment on colleges.
And I see that they have a grant, or they're seeking a grant
Seeking
for
a grant
McCormick.
for McCormick.
So that would certainly be a good thing that we wouldn't have to.
Well, they do look for, they're looking for money to pay some internship, but it's something that I'm looking at.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
So this is just the initial, we had an initial meeting today. I just wanted the board members to be aware of it, okay?
Okay. Right.
Well, we have good working relationship with the Chicago Lawyers Committee, which we work with on our Project 18. What would you call it?
Suffragette 17.
Suffragette at 17. So that worked out real well. Great. Okay.
Basically, just to let the board members know, everything is geared up for the 2014-2015 election. We're ordering materials and supplies that'll take us through the 2015. We're working on that now. Laurel is back there, and she's been very busy. I think we're in real good shape, just to let the board members know.
Right.
So that's all I have. I'd like for Kelly and Jim to take over now.
Good morning.
Good morning, Kelly.
Everything's working well. I checked with Audra this morning about election judges. They are receiving applications daily. We are working with both parties. We don't have a vacancy list yet, but one will be coming shortly. College student plan proposal. Hopefully that'll increase the number of college students that we receive. Audra met with MICVA representatives yesterday, and they are once again ready and geared up to start with the high school recruitment program for election judges. Voter registration department is always working. I don't have the exact numbers. I don't know if Jim does, but as far as the online voter registrations we're receiving, I know we're receiving them daily, and that's working out well. And every other departments are just working out. Paige will probably give a brief rundown of what's happening at the warehouse as far as the PM. It's completed. PM is completed, yes, so that's good. Warehouse is just keeping up with what they need to do, cleaning things out and getting ready for November. So everyone's moving forward.
Great. Great. Questions for Mr. Goff or Ms. Bateman?
Just a comment for Lance and for Kelly. In a quick read of this Chicago Lawyers Committee and these prizes or awards that they're talking about, I have a lot of concern for anything that smacks of paying people
Can I tell you
to
something?
sign up.
We had that discussion, Commissioner, and something that I told him is something that we don't, we've seen too many organizations burn in the past over this, so they're gonna revisit that.
Okay.
So, no, paying bounties for anything is something I'm totally against. So, yes.
All righty. Mr. Allen, update from you?
Yes. Now, a lot of it relates to Mr. Goff, so. I'm trying
Should we
pick
ask
up.
him to step out of the room?
No.
I'm sorry I did it.
So, first thing is, since the signing of House Bill 105, with the growth of early voting and grace period voting through registration, through Election Day rather, he's had me prepare correspondence to Park District, Family and Support Services, and City Colleges to secure the sites for those. We also had a meeting with various voting activist groups like League of Women Voters, Asian Justice, Common Cause, what have you. They were very interested in finding out what our plans were and where we were going to have our locations. So we've also sent out, since the last meeting, you recommended that we send out letters to all the voter engagement participants. Those letters have gone out to congratulate them on their participation in that program and to tell them that as a result of their participation, this is how far we've come with various initiatives, including online registration, and now a pilot program for same-day registration. The canvas to 1.3 million voters will be hitting the mail. It is completely printed. It will be hitting the mail tomorrow. We wanted to give a little time to the Postal Service. We wanted to get a bulletin to them to, in turn, get news out to all of their station managers. We've had excellent cooperation in the past, and we want to ensure that we have that again this time. So that will hit all 1.3 million voters, and the intent of that is to provide a polling place for the first time per Mr. Goff, and on the card, on the voter card, and also to clean up the rolls for both 2014 and 2015. We had a presentation with Kelly, a group from the State Department, young people from Armenia, Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. Had some very thought-provoking questions on voter registration, voter ID, and balloting system security. Online registration, as Kelly mentioned, we're now up over 620. We have about 20 that have been rejected as suspicious or unprocessable. They did not have identifying information that matched and that could be processed. So overall, a fairly good success rate on that. Kelly's staff participated at the Access Chicago Convention. That was a huge success. We were very well greeted there. That's for people with different physical abilities. Our city budget submissions are complete. They've expressed interest in the portions where we touched on the infrastructure. I know I'm jumping ahead here, but they asked Lance and myself and Peter Peso follow-up questions about replacing the ballot scanners and what that would entail versus replacing the touch screens. So we've given them a little bit of information on that. They seem to understand that that's an inevitability, not some dream that we've concocted. Lastly, as Kelly referenced, we've been meeting with different leaders, including legal counsel for candidate Bruce Rauner and the Republican Party and Democratic committeeman about the appointment process for judges for this new period. We're hopeful that we can get, as Kelly mentioned, as close to full as possible. And I'll leave it at that.
Questions for Mr. Allen? All right, if not, we'll move ahead to old business. Infrastructure projects. I don't know.
They worked on, I mean, it's ongoing.
Yeah, it's ongoing. Obviously, we have budget requests in for the next phase of our infrastructure development, so we'll have to wait and see how that works out. Electronic poll books.
moving right along. We're still meeting with the SNS weekly. They come here either weekly or like twice a month just to be hands-on here in the office to talk to staff. We're still working forward on the early voting and grace period e-poll books. So we're moving forward tomorrow. Rick Dixon from ESNS will be here in the office to work with staff. So we're moving forward.
And Kelly, have they implemented for lack of a better term, the lessons learned from the last election in terms of things like the progress bar?
Yes.
And
Oh, yes.
all that's been implemented?
Yes, well,
Okay.
they're working on it. We have our
They're work-
list of 49 or 50
Uh-huh.
items that we wanted, reviewed and revised and changed if possible.
Mhm.
So we are, yes, we
Okay.
are working
We're
on that
slugging away at
list.
that.
The
Yeah, the
biggest
biggest
thing
one-
is the smart update on election morning, going
Right.
from the 25, 30 minutes and also the progress bar.
Right.
Getting that down, we're saying 5, they're saying 7, but it has to be considerably less time than it was
Yes.
in March. So
Right.
yes, absolutely, all of
Okay.
that is being
Definitely
worked
gonna
on.
provide a progress bar.
Yes.
Hopefully they can get it under 10 minutes.
Yes.
Okay.
So that'll be a huge difference right there.
Right.
As far as the punch list on the House, if you will.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the big item.
Have we
Okay.
already gotten the additional poll books?
Not yet.
Not yet. We're still reviewing that. Right.
Okay.
And are they working on the interface, when you say for early voting and grace period voting, they're working on the interface with our equipment?
Yes.
All
We did
right.
a connectivity test last week, and it was a small universe, but it went well.
Uh,
It's a different system than Election Day, so
It's
but we're working
totally
on it.
different.
Yes,
It's different.
yes.
It's different than Election Day, so
And Paige, is Dominion involved in that too?
what Dominion's input is, we're working on card activation.
Okay.
With the e-poll book, and we're working with Dominion as well. Card activation through using the e-poll book and the hat for card activation and not having to manually enter a ballot code into the hat.
Right.
Yes, that is being worked on.
Will that be ready for this next election?
The testing process,
Yes, no,
We
maybe
are-
so?
yes.
the
We are
testing
saying yes.
process is scheduled for
Yes.
the middle of August.
Yes,
August
we are-
15th
That
is
gives
our
us
drop
wiggle
dead.
room.
Okay,
to
so
try
when,
to- try to
okay, good.
either
We-
go to our Plan B or
And
make
Chairman,
adjustments to make sure it works by September 15, well ahead of October 20.
and
Okay.
Chairman, we do have a plan B, so
Good.
we're
Oh,
no
yeah.
matter what, it's going to be
Well, we
taken
could
care of.
do what we've been doing, right?
We have to
Something like-
modify because we're
Yeah.
running on a new platform on our voter registration, so that has to be modified. So we're tacking this two ways,
Yeah.
so we will have it done no matter what.
Okay.
Other than these improvements really generated as a result of the primary, are there any new or changes in functionality? Is the equipment going to be doing anything different than previously, or just doing it better?
Yes.
Both?
Both.
Yes. There are several items that as Kelly mentioned, we had a list of 50 items that we delineated that we wanted to see whether they were changes in the reports, in the reporting system, or something as simple as, we couldn't get it done ahead of the primary. There'll be the year of birth, but also just the age. And we think, we've seen that in other jurisdictions where that will really help judges quickly be able to identify. They don't have to do any math in their head. 1957 means this person should be about, what? So to say, whatever the age is, 47 years old, 57 years old, 67. And that's going to help with visual identification of the person they're looking at. So it'll have the year of birth, it'll have the name and address, obviously, but it'll also have their age. So we're hopeful that that's one little item, but
And
that takes a little programming.
right, but they also, and what Mr. Allen's talking about is also something that we learned from New York. New York did that, and it stopped somebody who's
Yes,
father and
yeah.
son voting for each other. So that's what we're looking at.
It's not so much about voter impersonation as it is trying to prevent clerical errors that can happen with two Joe Smiths registered in the same block or the same building.
couple of things.
Now, when you say, Mr. Goff, we're running on a different voter registration platform, you mean since we've made internal changes to our
Exactly.
Our
We-
system.
We have upgraded our.
Right.
All of our internal systems in this office.
Right, okay. I just want to make sure we're not in any way trying to blend in the state system
No.
into our,
No.
okay, so we're maintaining our
Because
domain.
the state system didn't come into being, the state election management system, we developed our own election management / voter registration system. Is compatible to be able to receive the state's online voter
Yes.
registrations, but it's also on a much more robust and flexible and secure platform. It's based in SQL 2012, as opposed to the old system, which was not even SQL. It was written in the early 90s.
Yeah,
So,
so it's hard to just kind of get caught up
Not a
here.
problem, Chairman.
So, in the interface between Dominion and ES&S on this, making the card, making the hat essentially, and the voter registration system work together, are we the lead on the mechanical process, or, I mean,
There are a couple of other jurisdictions, but they're not doing it the same way we are. We're doing it directly, we're going to directly from either the poll book or the laptop, right into the, either on the hat to the card or directly into the hat.
Okay.
And that's what we're working on.
and Paige, I'm just want to make sure that from Dominion standpoint, you have buy-in on this, and you're comfortable with the interface of the two systems and the interface of the technology?
Yes, from the information I've had visibility to, I believe that Dominion has supplied all of the technical information that is required to allow that to happen.
Okay. That wasn't quite what, I appreciate that, that's one
Okay.
question. But do we have total buy-in from Dominion on the interface of the two technologies?
I believe the answer is yes.
I just want to hear from Paige.
Okay.
I mean, I know we're the quarterback of that, but, you know, it's important. Okay,
Everybody's involved, Mr. Chairman.
all right, I know everybody's involved, I just want to make sure everybody's pulling from the same harness.
Mr. Chairman, to that
I
end,
think that's what I mean.
what essentially we're doing is, instead of the manual entry of
Yeah.
that 5-digit or more ballot code, it's now going to be done from the electronic poll book. And the added value that we get is we're going to be able to track and capture for the first time every ballot style that was issued to every voter.
Mhm.
So there's even less question than you might have on election day when they're handing over a paper ballot, and you hope that they're handing over the correct ballot style. In this instance, we're adding a little more certainty and an actual record of what ballot style that person received. From time to time, we'll get a call from someone who claims to have not received the correct ballot style, and they want a do-over. We'll explain, A, that's impossible, B, you should have brought that ballot to the judge of election and spoiled the ballot if you thought you received the wrong ballot. Now we're going to actually be able to track every early voting person using this mechanism.
So when you, and I'm sorry that I'm stuck on this, but I just want to make sure, because I have some apprehension when you put two different vendors together with two different systems, two different technology, two different software platforms, whatever, and then you put them together. Not that it can't be done, I'm just saying, it's a little apprehension. So when you put these together, will this all be done through a software adjustment?
Yes.
There doesn't have to be any new hardware purchase?
We're not sure if we need to actually purchase something, an emulator to actually program the card, so it's something.
That's
that
what I
we're
was
looking
wondering.
into.
Okay, and who would manufacture that emulator?
It will be off the shelf,
Off the shelf?
yes.
Like
Because
great,
card emulators are out there, so
Okay,
It's a card burner, basically.
a card burner.
Mhm.
You on top of that page?
Yes.
Okay.
Dominion and ES&S both signed non-disclosure agreements. They're working together. I think
Okay.
we should have that
All
taken
right,
care of.
I made my piece here.
No,
Just
I
wanted to
understand.
get everybody on.
Chairman,
you know.
I see where you're
Yeah,
going,
you know where I'm
and we
going.
will follow.
I don't want to don't have it is.
No,
Yeah.
we're not going to
Okay.
have that.
Everybody's all in.
Yeah.
All right.
I have a question, Jim. You mentioned something about this ballot track. That you can identify the ballot that was given to a voter.
Ballot style.
Style, so
The
there is
ballot
no
style
way,
was,
there's
no,
no way
you
that you
can't.
could identify how that particular voter cast a vote.
No.
no,
No.
no, it's entirely a secret ballot, and but it is clearly marking, is capturing what ballot style was issued to that voter. It's captured as part of their ballot application through the electronic.
Just so long as there's no possibility that
No.
that
I
could lead to a
apologize.
disclosure of how that person voted.
No, in fact, on the application for ballot, it has the ballot style on there that the voter's supposed to receive.
Right, but this
Yeah.
is to verify that the voter received that.
The right way.
Or did not.
Correct.
As the case might be.
Correct.
So if you implement this, then we don't need our laptops anymore, is that?
If
We won't be
put
using
this
those.
in, then we won't use
Laptops.
laptops in the precinct. If it cannot be done in time, we will be using our laptops.
That's the
So
plan.
they-
Yeah, that's our plan
That's
B,
the plan
and that's
B.
only for
Early voting.
early voting.
Yeah, right, early for early vote. Okay, thank you. I feel better now. All right, anything else for voting equipment? Okay. Anything for legislation, Mr. Scanlon?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We'll move to new business. We have a contract. It's what?
Very first on any business.
It's after the yellow card.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you. We have a contract to consider for Joan Agnew. And the items, Joan here?
She's working
No,
right now.
okay. Items A through E, specifically to act as the board's Freedom of Information Act officer. B, to act as the board ethics advisor. C, to perform legal research, prepare memorandum, draft opinions, assist in administrative hearings and other activities. D, to represent and defend the board, the commissioners and staff in litigation as directed by the board, and to assist and advise the board staff on legal matters as directed by the board, the commissioners, and or the executive director. The contract is for a term of 1 year, June 1st, 2014 to May 31st, 2015. And I don't seem to see
Page 3.
compensation, thank you, for this, for $210 per hour, which is certainly a very competitive rate for the board. So is there a motion to approve?
I have a comment
Yes.
first on this, and I talked with Ms. Agnew about this, with Jim as our general counsel, and also with Lance. Items C, D, and E in paragraph 2 now refer to being directed by the board. My understanding is that items A and B will be Joan Agnew's specific responsibility. But items C, D, and E will be as directed by our general counsel. So that we're not in a position where we would have two excellent attorneys
Working
coming
on it.
before us
I agree.
and asking us to decide who is to handle a particular matter within C, D, or E. And when I talked with Joan, she understood that as well, but it doesn't quite read that way. It says as directed by the board. I would think it should be as directed by the general counsel.
Okay.
Is that satisfactory to you, Jim?
Yes.
Okay,
And it's something that we discussed, so
Yeah.
we'll make that change.
okay.
Yeah. And Joan indicated in our conversation that she was agreeable to that change and comfortable with that working relationship. She said that's frankly what she intended and understood by these provisions anyway.
All right, with that change, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Cowan, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Hernandez. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
That'll be the order. All right, under new business, we have a 2014 second revised 2014 election calendar and second revised 2015 election information pamphlet and calendar. Mr. Scanlon, did you want to comment on that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the changes to the 2014 election calendar are necessitated by the omnibus bill, House Bill 105, that was passed by the General Assembly, and that became law July 1, 2014. And this includes three specific areas. One, it changes the time that voters may make application for an absentee ballot. It moves it up from 40 days before the election to 90 days before the election. So that change has been made with respect to the November 2014 general election. Second, it extends the last day for early voting to the second day before the election. Currently, it is now the third day. So it changes from Saturday to Sunday. And that change is also reflected in the calendar for the November 2014 general election. And finally, it extends the last day for grace period registration and voting at permanent polling places for early voting until the close of the polls on Election Day. Currently, grace period ends on the third day or Saturday before Election Day. So now this will be extended to the day of the election up until 7 p.m. On Election Day. Those changes are reflected in the correction sheet that's right behind the cover sheet. It identifies the changes that are being made to the 2014 calendar, and I would recommend its adoption.
Is there a motion to approve the 2014 election calendar, second revised 2014 election calendar, and the second revised 2015 election information pamphlet calendar?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Moved and properly.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before you vote on the 2015,
Okay.
a couple of things. One, the draft that I forwarded to you earlier, toward the end of last week, actually did not contain the correct update sheet or correction sheet.
Okay.
I talked with Mary Ann this morning. She was kind enough to have copies of the corrected 2015 calendar placed in your book, which you now have before you. It does identify the changes being made by the second revision. It includes information with regard to the time within which voters may request an absentee ballot. So that change is being made for both the February 24, 2015 municipal general election and the April 7, 2015 municipal runoff and supplementary automatic election. It also includes a statement that objectors to candidate petitions and to referendum petitions must now file 2 copies of the objection petition. Previously, they were only required to file 1. And there's also a statement in the new law, in the omnibus bill, that objection petitions that do not include 2 copies thereof shall not be accepted. So that statement has also been placed into the 2015 election calendar. It also inserts a date for a deadline to withdraw if a person presents his or her name as a candidate for 2 or more offices that are incompatible. That date is Wednesday, December 3rd, 2014. And finally, it inserts a date for the deadline for the city clerk to certify any public question to be submitted to voters within the city of Chicago that are initiated by the city council of the city of Chicago. So those are the changes that are being made in the 2015 election information pamphlet and calendar. And again, I would recommend its adoption.
Motion to
Moved and properly seconded?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The second revised 2014 election calendar and the second revised 2015 election calendar are approved. 2015 local option guidelines, Mr. Skinner?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, again, the draft of the guidelines for local option referenda that were circulated last week had the incorrect date on the first page. That was in the footer. The date should have been today's date, July 29th, 2014. You have before you the corrected version of the guidelines for local option referenda for the February 24, 2015 municipal general election, and I would recommend its adoption.
Motion to adopt?
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
That'll be the order. Finally, the 2015 advisory referendum guidelines.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, again, there was a slight error. In the first page, up at the header, the draft that I had circulated last week had a date of July 22nd, which was the date that this meeting was originally scheduled for. That date should be July 29, 2014. You have before you a corrected copy of the guidelines for advisory referendum. I just would make one comment with regard to the substance of the guidelines, and that is that with regard to the minimum signature requirement, the statute in Article 28 requires that petitions contain at least a number equivalent to at least 8% of the number of votes cast for governor at the last gubernatorial election. Now, as we speak, the last gubernatorial election would have been November 2010. However, by the time of the deadline for filing these petitions, we will have had the November 4, 2014 general election, which is the gubernatorial election. So the minimum signature requirement is going to be based upon the number of votes cast for governor at this November 4, 2014 general election. It's going to be a little difficult for proponents of petitions to calculate their minimum signature requirement because that number will not be known until after the November 4, 2014 election.
And when are those petitions due again?
The deadline for filing the petitions is November 24th, 2014. 20 days after the election. Right now, the last date is scheduled. The last date to canvass and proclaim is November 25th. We can certainly move that up. We can't do it any sooner than 14 days after the election, but we can do it anytime between the 15th and the 21st day.
So so 14 days plus the date of the election is November,
November 18th.
Right,
it's November 18th.
right.
Good rules.
And the
We'll
last,
still be
so there's
accepting-
still 6 days, 6 days?
We could proclaim as early as November 19th.
Mm-hmm, okay. It'd make 5 days.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Now, this is the same approach that this board took for the February 2011 municipal election with regard to advisory referendum. At that time, the board fixed the November 2010 gubernatorial election as the date for calculating the minimum signature requirement. I agree it gets a little tricky. We have urged the General Assembly, and in fact, at one time, they did change it. It had been set as a percentage, or 8% of the number of votes cast. At one time, they moved it so it was fixed by using the number of registered voters. But then they changed it back to the number of votes cast in the gubernatorial election, against our recommendation, I should add.
Well, actually, if they just moved it back to the previous gubernatorial election, would have been.
Right. Right.
So, but
Well-
it does present its challenges.
Yeah.
I admit that.
Well, and needless to say, I think we should once again bring this up to the legislature, and, you know, this is a great example of, you know, why it should be changed.
I agree.
Well, hopefully it won't be a legal issue.
Hopefully, but we'll have to
I
wait and
know.
see.
Get a few more signatures. But, okay.
So we need to approve this.
Is there a motion to approve the 2015 advisory referendum guidelines?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Cowan.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Hernandez. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
That'll be the order. All right, we have a two of financial reports. One from the City of Chicago, voucher number 1407, dated July 29, 2014, in the amount of $274,341.08, 274,341.08.
I'll move approval.
Moved by Commissioner Cowan.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Hernandez. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that'll be the order. We also have a County of Cook voucher, in voucher 1408, dated 7/29/2014, in the amount of $766,548.10, 766,548.10. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Moved by Commissioner
Second.
Hernandez. Seconded by Commissioner Cowan. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That'll be the order. It is approved.
Mr. Chairman, before getting to public comment, I would just like to ask Gary a question that it looks like we will certainly have 2 ballots in November. If the Supreme Court allows the term limits proposition to remain on, will that require a 3rd ballot, or are we just speculating on that?
Commissioner, if they do put term limits back on, we will need a 3rd ballot. We will not have enough room on 2 of them. It's just too big of a question to try and squeeze it. It'll be a matter of when the decision's made. If we can try and take the term limits and put that with the other constitutional amendment questions. Then on the 3rd ballot would be the state, county, and city reps. But it all depends when the ruling would come down. The worst case scenario would be if it's a late decision, we're into the process already. The term limit question may be on a separate ballot by itself. It's just going to be a matter of the timing of it. But it will require a 3rd ballot.
Thank you.
And if I could just address
Yes.
the timing of it, as you know, the Supreme Court denied the motion for direct review to the Supreme Court. The term limits proponents have filed a motion to accelerate the docket in the Illinois Appellate Court. To my knowledge, that motion has not been ruled upon as of yet.
Okay. So more than likely, Jim, would we expect to have a decision before November?
Oh, I think we'll have a decision before November. It's going to be a question whether or not it's going to come time for election authorities throughout the state to print ballots with with the question, if the court should order the question be placed back on the ballot.
Has the appellate court, do they have a schedule?
Not that
for-
I'm aware of.
Right. Well, then there would always be an appeal there,
Correct.
and
Right.
the question of what would be the effective decision then of an appeal. Okay, we won't get there. All righty, public comment section, anybody for us today? Terry, do you have anything for us today? Sharon?
Hi there, how are you today?
Fine. Good to see you.
Sharon Maroney speaking today on wearing the hat of Defend the Vote.
Okay,
Hope you're all doing well.
yes.
I'm concerned about the couple of issues. One, you were discussing the hat and the merging of the poll books together. Did that require for a software adjustment on the hat?
No, it did not.
Okay. That was one of my questions, thank you. And my next issues I was concerned about is Defend the Vote's done a couple of investigations on early voting procedures and absentee ballot procedures, and I want to meet with the staff here to find out how you're going to be accommodating some of the changes. Number one, you're going to have the issue of having to store applications for absentee ballots for, I would imagine, up to 40 days, because you usually don't send them out until 45 days before the election, and now you're going to be getting applications in much earlier. So I want to see how those are going to be stored, what your security protocols are going to be. I'm also interested in being updated on the flaw that we had discovered in your procedures earlier, where early voting ballots were, which are electronic naturally, were being transported here without sufficient security. So I wanted to check up on that and see.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. The early voting ballots?
Well, when you send over the early voting ballots, you have the electronic ballot and you have the paper ballot scroll. Sure you do. The electronic ballot is what's on the USB device, and the scroll is what is the paper ballot.
Right.
So we uncovered, when we did research on it, that the chain of evidence, the custody from those leaving the polling places and coming here was lacking. And we did that through a FOIA investigation. I know we've reported on it here before, so I'm following up to see that those procedures have been improved. I've also been polling hundreds of election judges and have found that I asked them to report if both parties are returning the ballots, and I'm finding about 20% of the time they are not both returning the ballots, and so I wanted to make sure that that security gap was somehow covered in the election judge training program.
I think I'm a little lost there.
Okay, sorry.
You polled hundreds of election, and can you say that again?
Yes, we're polling hundreds of the election judges and asking them about their experiences as being a judge, and then we're keeping records of all of those conversations and looking for areas that they may find are flawed. And about 20% of the time we're finding that they're reporting only one party or the other, and it's not only one party. It could be either the Dems or the Repubs are returning the ballots to the polling place, and as you know, both parties are supposed to do it together. Sometimes it's transportation issues, sometimes it's just strictly that the party is not dominant enough in that precinct to be doing it, to be returning the ballots as a pair.
So, but I'm still confused. Where are they returning them? I mean,
She's talking about the transfer of the materials to the receiving station.
I jumped on
Ah.
election day. I was talking early voting and then I jumped to election day.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's two different processes, because I'm also concerned about the absentee voting processes. So if I could just meet with staff and find out how you're doing all those security things, we'll update our files on that. And also with the new issues related to early voting and the fact that there is no longer going to be a photo ID, we have discussed in past the issues related to the training of election judges on signature verifications, and I would like to have further discussion about that, because that is the only line of security that we have anymore. And we've also been polling our election judges on whether or not they feel that they would like to have more information on signature verification, and we're hearing that they would. So
Okay, well, I remember that we had this discussion on signature verification before
we did.
at this meeting, and we stated at that time.
Let us review.
Okay.
I just think it's a great time because it's so far in advance to update the training program. And I think when we talked about it before, we were in the middle of already training the judges. So that was one of the issues. And that's it.
Sharon, I have a question on
Yes.
your comment on the transmittal of both the flash drive or the disk or however it's recorded in early voting and the paper ballots.
Correct.
You say that there isn't a proper chain of custody.
That is correct.
Do
We
you have-
documented that problem.
Okay, do you have specific suggestions or do you have specific comments on why it's not a proper chain of custody?
Well, the way that we did it is we did it through a FOIA, and so we looked at whether or not the judges were properly recording the information that was being transported, and we found they were not, and it was a large percentage of them that were not done. And also that there was no check and balance back at the board's office when they received the data to check off that indeed that data had been properly received. So there's a flaw in the process that just needed to be updated.
So it's
We
a
have-
paper
Well,
issue.
technically it's a paper, but who knows, frankly, you know, if you can't trace the chain of custody, then you can't trace fraud.
Well,
That's
do you
the
have
problem.
any indication that the voting information and the paper trail were not returned?
You know, I didn't do a fraud investigation, I did a procedural investigation, and I found that there were sufficient gaps in the procedure that a fraud investigation would not be warranted because I couldn't track where the flaw was. If it's not recorded when it's leaving the polling place and it's not recorded when it's here, I don't know what happened in the middle.
Right, because, again, in the time that I've been the commissioner, I have not heard anybody say, hey, wait a minute, those votes from that early voting station never made it to the central office and were never counted. I've never heard anybody make that claim.
And I didn't say that either. I said that
Right.
the procedural process that you guys have in place disallows us the ability to forensically look at where that could have been
Well,
lost.
what do you understand the procedural process to be?
When the judges when the courier arrives at the early voting polling place to pick up the USB cords and the VPAT scrolls, they should be writing it down on a piece of paper and sealing the envelope, and then that piece of paper in the envelope should be coming back here. And what we found was that very often they did not write down the scroll number. The scrolls actually have a number on them based on the canister that they came from. And then that is supposed to be correlated with the USB device, sorry. And it just wasn't being done.
Chair?
Mr. Goff?
I'm sorry. Those procedures have been rewritten, so I will submit copies to the board members and also to Ms. Moroni.
Great.
Thank you.
And the issue of the ID at early voting sites?
This was something that is brand new.
I forgot.
Yeah, in the omnibus bill, House Bill 105, for the November 2014 general election only,
Mhm.
it removed or suspended the requirement that the voter produce a valid photo ID when they go to early vote. So there will be, for this upcoming election, there will be no requirement that the voter who goes to vote early produce a valid photo ID.
Does that prevent us from encouraging our voters to bring it as a fail-safe mechanism of some sort, or would that be against the
It doesn't,
spirit of the statute?
it does not prohibit us from doing so, and I think in the past, we have in fact
We always-
encouraged
We
voters
have-
to produce.
Right.
In your remarks before every election day, you've always encouraged, and we also in our content on our website, we've always encouraged voters to have that if they can.
Right.
Available, so that if there is any question at all,
Right.
they are able to produce that identification. In the past, just so you know, we received virtually no complaints whatsoever about ID being required at early voting, so this was kind of a surprise that this came about.
Okay.
And just to follow up on that, Cook County has ID scanners that they are putting in place. And so when voters come in to vote for early voting, their ID will be scanned. If they don't choose to produce one.
Can I tell you something, though, Mr. Burnett? I need to, because I'm following up with Cook County, and they have not put that in place yet.
Oh, okay, I was informed that it's
They
going to
have
be
not
put.
put that
I'd be
in place
very
yet.
concerned
Yeah.
about that.
They have not put that in
Oh.
place yet.
Well, no, that's a great idea, because if a voter doesn't want to do it, then they don't have to, but the advantage of it is it hurries and speeds up the processing of the voters. And so if we have an issue.
But it also collects,
Well, then the question I would have is, if your training
Yeah.
for the election judges
Yeah.
is going to be consistent with the security protocol, if that judge believes in any way, shape, or form that that signature is not a good signature, they should require ID.
Well,
Because
that's-
otherwise, what happens is the judges aren't being, aren't being trained to say, yes, if it doesn't make a match, just ask for the ID. And if they don't have the ID, it's early voting, number one, and number two, they can always get a provisional ballot.
Yeah,
But if we don't have any stopgaps in the middle, then there's really, it's loosey-goosey as far as who's right in front of you if you can't check their ID.
yeah. I just don't know if it's wise to record that and maintain a record of that, but that's not, we're gonna do that, so. I don't have to worry about
That would open up a whole series of risks.
Whole can of series of risks.
With driver's license, state IDs.
Oh.
Right.
You
Well,
don't
I
get sued
I'm
automatically.
confused on why it's any different than somebody just showing it at the site.
Because you're recording it, you're maintaining a record of all the information that's on the driver's license.
I see. I'm not
You're
sure that it
creating-
records it. It might just scan it.
If it scans it, it's gonna record it, believe you me. But anyway, that's not our issue.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Maroney. It's always good to hear from you. Anything else to come before the board? I'll accept the motion to recess till our,
Do we have any need for an executive session?
I'm sorry, I didn't think that.
No, we
don't.
No need, okay. Then we'll accept a motion to recess to our board to the next regularly scheduled meeting, which will be August 12th.
But, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, oh, that's right.
We have a meeting of the board as an electoral board scheduled for Tuesday, August 5th, 9 a.m. That's next week. I also suggest to you that that the board conduct a regular board meeting or a special board meeting in tandem with that electoral board.
Okay, and we'll recess until August 5 at 9 o'clock.
Motion?
Moved and properly second, all those in favor?
Aye.
That'll be the, thank you.